This is my new project I'm working on. I am constructing a woodworker style butcher block top table for my little workshop room. And these are 2x4 black locust boards that I had installed on the sawmill about a year ago or so. They had been drying all summer. They're now, the moisture content's low enough to build with. So I have got them all planed, thickness planed on two sides that are smooth. The top sides, they're still rough. I'll bring you in closer and I'll show you what I'm talking about. I have numbered the boards. I've figured out which ones made up nicely together. I'm exploring my options. One probably crazy idea would be to glue this all together in one shot, carry it over to the sawmill, and take a skim cut to make the top perfectly flat. Don't know if the sawmill will do that. Don't even think I'll be able to pick this up. So that idea is probably not going to happen. What I'm more leaning towards is, and what I've done so far is, I've gotten it pretty close. If you look at it this way, you'll see the boards aren't perfect. There's some high spots and some low spots. On the underside, where it's sitting on the sawhorse, I actually have it pretty flat on both sides. So that's actually looking pretty good. I took a hand plane and knocked down any of the real tall spots. So I have the bottom reasonably flat. What I think I'm gonna end up doing is gluing 4 or 5 boards together in a shot. When the glue sets up, I'm going to take and use a nice flat board as a sled to send each section through the thickness planer. So the sled will kind of hold it, you know, reasonably flat, send it through. I'll get these tops all smoothed out. So I'll do each section. So I'll have like 3 sections to do. Once they're all the same thickness, I can flip them over, skim the bottom, and then they should, when I bring them back in, mate up really close to each other. There might be some slight deviation that we'll just have to get worked out later with either hand planes or most likely just sanders. So I will bring you along as I do this project, and we'll just see how it comes out together. I've never done anything like this before, so this is a first time for me, but I'll bring you along anyway. Good, bad, or ugly, we'll see how this comes out. All right, I have everything set up. I have some drop cloths down. I put some tin foil. Hopefully this will help keep the glue off my sawhorses. The glue I'm using is Type Bond 3, and I bought this little silicone roller thing off of Amazon. I read that this is the way to do this. So I'm gonna put you on the time lapse. My goal tonight is I just wanna get one section glued up so I can experiment with different methods to get these things flat, and then we'll go from there. All right, I want to bring you in for a status update. I have 2 sections glued together. I have 5 pieces and 4 pieces. I have 4 boards left. So my original plan was to glue another set of 4 up, thickness plane all these down to the same, then glue the 3 big sections up, and then I'll just have to hand tune it with hand planes and sanders. Discovered a bit of a problem. This came to me after I had started it. Here's where we're at. So my first piece is here, you know, my middle section, my end section, they're glued up solid. When I push them together, They fit up fairly good. They're tight down at the end here, but then as you can see let me see if I can line you up with the light. You can see there's a little gap that probably gets at worst maybe 1/8 of an inch, if that, maybe a little less. So it's pretty tight. Now the clamp, because this is all glued up, I cannot clamp this thing tight enough to suck that gap in, because these boards are now very strong the way they're glued up. So a couple different options I've come up with, one of which was to, instead of glue my last boards together in one rack, I'd get these two sections planed down flat. Then I found boards that kind of fit best into the different spots. So I'd have one board in the middle, one board on the end, and the other two on the back end. That was one idea. But then just this morning I was thinking, maybe I should attempt to just take a little bit off with a hand plane on this side here, on that face, on both ends. And I might be able to close that gap. So I think I'm going to give that a try. Let's see where I could screw up too bad with that. So I'm going to give that an attempt, and we'll see what happens. What I have here is one of these Rubbermaid plastic shelves. I'm going to use that as a flat surface because I have a little bit of tilt in my board here. So I'm going to take some hot glue, put some dabs on here, and actually glue this setup to the plastic board, and then that'll help me keep it all together when I send it through the thickness planer. Hopefully, I'm making sure that I'm 90 degrees on the edge here, so hopefully that'll make everything made up nice. We'll see how it comes out. All right, so here's where we're at now. I have my two glued up sections on the outsides. These last batch here seem to have a bow to them in the middle, and it would be about 1/4 inch of planing to knock that down, and then it would kind of leave me with a hollowed section in the center on the bottom, which isn't that big of a deal. So I'm going to attempt, before I do any gluing, I'm going to attempt to see if I can use this car jack and a chain, see if I can force this down before I do any gluing. So we'll see what that does. And this didn't work at all. I've reached a stage in a project where you've tried everything, have reached a state of analysis paralysis, and then now you're just going to have to make it happen. So there's no way I can get the crown out of these boards. I do have it planed nicely so that they fit up. I'm just going to glue it together as it sits, and then I'm going to have myself a hand planing party and knock the center down flat with the outer edges. As I've said this earlier, this is, I would say, not how to make a workbench. But with my limited tools and limited experience, this is how it's going so far. All right, I want to bring you in on an update on my tabletop. As I showed you earlier, when I glued this up, there was quite a crown in the center section of this table. So I've diligently been working at removing that crown. I've gone through many different methods. This has been quite the learning experience. I had to use 3 hand planes because after a while they get dull. This wood's very hard and difficult to work with. So I started out with this one, went with a little bit bigger one, and then I had to pull out this one to finish up. I got it pretty close. I even attempted, I had this old power planer, but the blades were very dull. That didn't work very good. I tried a belt sander, wouldn't cut it. Ultimately, I set up a router sled with this big 2-inch router bit. That actually worked pretty good. So I'm gonna bring you in closer and I'll show you where I'm at. And then I'll tell you my plans for the next step. All right, so what I've done here, I've popped my table onto the temporary sawhorses. I took my 4-foot level here, and I have these, as you can see the bubble there, it's closer to this side, but that doesn't really matter. This concrete floor is sloped as long as they're both the same. So both of these are reading the same on the level. Now what I found was, which this is good for my whole setup, this side was actually where I was showing that the board was curved. It might not be as curved as I thought. I had to take shims and raise this up about 1/4 inch. So that's actually going to go in my favor. I took my long level, I checked for level this way, and then I was going to use string, but you don't need to with this. You want to check this way to make sure that there's no twist. So going diagonally, I have level in both diagonal directions. So now I'm fairly confident that I'm not going to have any twist in these sawhorses. So the next step is going to be to flip this over, and I'm going to take a skim coat off the back just to clean it up, and then I'll flip it back and get the top. I'll put you on the time lapse for that. All right, that was the first pass on the bottom. I took a much thinner cut from this side. Toward the end there, it was taking almost 1/8 inch. I think that's why I was getting it a little bit hot. It was a little burning, but not all that concerned about that. That will sand out. This is the bottom anyway, so I'm actually not concerned about that at all. But now I'm gonna flip it over. This actually came out really flat. Just ran the flat edge across it, and it's looking good. So I'm gonna flip it over, dust everything off, and go for the top. That was a workout. So I ended up doing, I think, 4, maybe 5 passes to take it all flat. I probably ended up taking, the first cut was a little bit too much, so it caused me to take an extra cut. But here it is. These are just little burn marks where, I would stop, and you can't feel them with your hand, so they're going to sand out. And don't forget, the edges are getting cut off. As you can see, I made a colossal mess. So before I do anything else, any more sanding, I'm going to get the bulk of the sawdust swept up. But router sled definitely saved the day. That's the way to do this kind of work, I guess. So I'll know in the future. Here we are, it's the next day after I did all that router sled work. I'm really happy to say that the table came out perfect now. Just a day ago, before I started the router sled, I was convinced this was doomed. I was prepared to turn this into more firewood. But I'm glad that I didn't do that. and I did the router sled trick, knocked this whole thing down. I had it sanded to 150 grit. I'm going to leave it at that for now. I need to research some finish options. I'm going to be doing a follow-up video to this, building the legs and applying the finish, so keep an eye out for that in the future. And thanks for watching, guys. Subscribe if you'd like, and we will see you on the next video.